Hello, it is Thursday, March 29th, 2018 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Marketing Live. I am your host, Amy Jorgensen from the University of Virginia. Today's live broadcast is The Art and Science of Handshake. Just a few years ago, Garrett Lord was a student at Michigan Tech. Now he's the CEO of a career service platform called Handshake. His technology is helping students navigate the career search at 500 universities across the country. Tune in to learn how this tool supports students, schools, and employers. Garrett will share some of the science behind the platform, including AI and machine learning. We'll dig into how Handshake approaches problem solving for its diverse user base. Marketing Live is part of a Higher Ed Live network. Our episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Be a part of our live broadcast by sharing your knowledge. Participate in today's discussion using #HigherEdLive. All of our episodes are free and easy to access in the video archives at higheredlive.com, or take Higher Ed Live with you on the go by subscribing to the podcast. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a digital-first agency committed to tailored solutions that drive real results. We know you've wondered what prospective teens are thinking and when they receive and read or ignore your institution's recruitment marketing. In partnership with NRCCUA, the myth-busting enrollment marketing research uncovers the best marketing channels and communication preferences that have the biggest influence on prospective teens' perceptions of your institution. The white paper is available for demand download. Get your copy today and identify what encourages prospective teens to apply to your institution. We'll be tweeting out a link shortly. I'd like to welcome our guest, Garrett Lord. Welcome, Garrett.
Yeah, great to be speaking this morning. Thanks for having me on.
Garrett is the CEO and co-founder of Handshake, so we're kind of with a celebrity right now, which is exciting.
Thanks, Amy. Appreciate it.
So anyone, again, who's watching, do not hesitate to ask your questions by using #HigherEdLive, and I'll do my best to bring them along to Garrett during the episode. So let's start off with a few questions of my own, and let's start off from the beginning with some of our higher ed viewers that may not be at a Handshake school. So a few years ago, you were studying at Michigan Tech, and now you're the CEO of Handshake, helping students navigate their career search at, like we said, over 500 universities across the country. So tell me a little bit more about how you developed the idea and ultimately created Handshake.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Amy, for the question. It's been a really fun journey to kind of get where we are today. I started over 6 years ago as students at Michigan Tech University, which for those of you that don't know is this university in the kind of middle of nowhere, Michigan, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So it's pretty far away. Exactly. We go to the hands. You got the lower right here, and you got the upper.
Michiganders, yeah.
And it's like it's about 8 hours away from Detroit, 6 hours from Chicago. Really fun if you love to ski, but very outdoorsy place. But what that ended up creating is this really kind of as students, we really struggled to navigate our way from college to career and to understand a lot of the true opportunities that existed beyond college. It's really, I think that the two main factors that influence post-graduation outcomes are the socioeconomic status of your family or the regional proximity of your university to like a major metropolitan or economic hub. That's a big kind of study from Jeff Slingo's book. And in this kind of pain that I witnessed a lot of my friends struggle with from college to career, we really, being software engineers and computer science majors, were wondering how could we potentially build software to help solve this problem. We as students felt we didn't have the right access to opportunities. We didn't really understand and have enough information as it related to even how to navigate our way into those opportunities. And we witnessed our career service center who was waking up every day to try to solve these problems and help students with this journey. They were battling out-of-date technology that really could be. We really thought we could build way better technology for them to help them in this process. So worked hand in hand with our career service center, my sophomore year of college, my junior year of college, my senior year of college, with a group of friends, with many universities across the Midwest, kind of pouring in feedback and advice about kind of a system that they wanted to see to help them engage more students and bring more employers to campus. Launched it after college with 5 universities. It's been incredible since then. Scaled from 5 universities, moved out to San Francisco, scaled to 60 universities, then 160, then this year 450, and next year we'll be at over 750 institutions in America, which is we'll be at about 75% of the top 500 universities in America will be using the platform. And it's still so exciting that every day we get to wake up with the same mission we started with, which is how can we help universities, how can we help students, how can we help employers, build more diverse talent pipelines and connect with more students. So it's been a fun journey.
I love that. And so let's talk a little bit more about your experience as a student and some of the challenges that you were seeing. And you talked a little bit about how some of the technology that they were using was outdated. So what were some of the biggest usability challenges that you saw in web platform designs? And how did you take some of that knowledge of like, okay, here's what's not working, here's what we want to do to make it better?
Totally. So I think a lot of the challenges that if I kind of take across all three sides. So a lot of the challenges that we heard from universities that they were facing is that they wanted mobile technology, they wanted smart technology, they wanted something actually relevant for students. They wanted a technology that kind of empowers them to do the things that they're good at doing, as people, and really automate a lot of the tasks that technology can, a lot of repetitive kind of data oriented tasks. So you heard from universities, they wanted something that was truly intuitive and engaging for their students, that had the right data to support this kind of journey from what do I want to do my freshman year of college all the way to like I'm trying to figure out these 4 companies I want to work with my senior year. And so I think what we really focused on is listening to customers and really understanding what their pains were in this kind of product development journey.
Smart.
Yeah.
No, I think that's incredibly smart. And talking with the customer and understanding how they're using it and why they're using it is brilliant. So let's talk a little bit about the design of Handshake as the platform. So how did you create, we have the 3 different users. How did you create a 3-sided user interface that supports the needs of students, career services, and employers?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of it was about breaking down silos. Today when you talk to employers, let's just say you're General Electric. General Electric's got when they think about campus recruiting and ultimately hiring students, the way the world used to work is it was very siloed in these kind of disparate ecosystems. If I just, for example, GE wanted to recruit in the Midwest, I had to log into 5 different sites with 5 different usernames and passwords. Each university was this kind of separate, isolated ecosystem, and that created a lot of work for employers. It made it very laborious to come to campus, and made it very challenging for many students to be seen by these employers, because employers had to kind of choose a more condensed set of universities to work with. So the big thing we hear from employers is they would always talk about these kind of like siloed ecosystems. So one of the big things we try to do with Handshake is really kind of break down a lot of these silos and make it easier for employers to connect with more universities. Additionally, on the university side, universities wanted to work together more in the system. They wanted to kind of leverage best practices from different universities. So one of the neat things about Handshake is that we power universities like Michigan State with like 50 active career service center staff members, all the way down to like Hillsdale College with probably 2 or 3 career service center staff members. So really, how can you bring the kind of best in class technology for the large universities and also make it usable, intuitive, and easy for smaller universities using the product?
And like you were saying, it's so brilliant that you did that, because you're able as an employer to recruit now, because it's one system, the Michigan State that's giant and has a whole bunch of students, and then also at the smaller liberal arts colleges that has maybe fewer students. So as an employer, you're able to really diversify your potential, employer base. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it was really neat. If you just think about the data too on this network, is there's 285,000 companies that use Handshake today. So that's 100% of the Fortune 500 is actively using the product. And these companies, like a Fortune 500 company, on average will have 17 recruiters per company actively using Handshake to recruit at fairs and post jobs. And so that huge employer network that is helped, is really grown with our university population. They end up connecting with, on average, 3 to 4 times the number of universities than they historically connected with. So universities, like I mentioned, Michigan State or an Albion, see a broader geographic array of opportunities, see a broader industry array of opportunities. And if you think about this, it really gets impactful today because a lot of students want to work at smaller companies. Like if you kind of survey millennials and are talking to students, they're interested in making a big impact and joining an organization where they can grow a lot and feel the fruits of their work. And so these smaller startups, smaller nonprofits that historically had to, constrain the number of universities that they recruited at are now able to really reach a national scale and build more diverse talent pipelines, both intern classes and full-time classes. So it gets really exciting to think about how these universities and many students now have access to so many opportunities that could be good fits for them. And that's all part of that the value of being a network, as I talked about.
That's brilliant. Can you talk a little bit about the student user interface of the device? Because one of the things that I love that you did is it is so easy to use as a student. So not even just as a staff member, which by the way is tenfold easier than the platforms we've used in the past. But as a student, you go in there and can you talk a little bit about how you designed it the way you did so it would be familiar?
Totally. So I think, what we hear from students and what, when we're talking to them and listening to them as we build technology, they're saying that they want, this is a pretty intimidating process. It's like pretty scary to, they want to be encouraged. They want a kind of friendly voice and tone in the product. So that kind of permeates through all of Handshake. When you're onboarded, we say fun things like, when we're asking a student where you want to work, it's like, well, we want to work on the beach. Where do you think about working? Right? And it's a little picture of an emoji of like a sun on the beach, and a student's able to add their location preferences. So that kind of friendly tone and relevant tone for students, I think, is really an important user experience kind of paradigm of a lot of today's successful apps with young students and this younger generation. Additionally, students really expect, and they have a super high quality bar around relevance and like a system being smart. I mean, when every technology a student's using, Netflix, Instagram, a lot of the day-to-day apps, like when they first log in, there's relevant, pertinent information that's personalized to them. So students want a personalized, friendly tone and interface that makes sense for them. So Handshake also leverages a lot of data and a lot of their interests and location preferences and what's on their profile and what school they go to and what their major is to kind of interweave and provide a way more personalized experience for students that they believe is built for them. I think those are two really important principles. Being on mobile, where students are at, is also huge. I mean, we see the engagement rates for students that have our mobile application is almost like twice as high across every dimension, because students want to complement their existing kind of web processes with a mobile application that they can just check in these kind of intermittent times throughout the day. So it's kind of interesting to think about the job search behavior when a student's on the go, walking around. And then we also want to make sure that the Career Service Center is able to kind of personalize and localize the experience for each student. So, for example, Amy, you're at UVA. Your students, because we work with these Career Service Centers, you're able to personalize the experience based on these kind of like experts on each campus. So UVA might try to talk to their students and communicate with their students on Handshake in a very different way than maybe UC Berkeley does or Albion College does in the state of Michigan. So we also want to provide and leverage these Career Service Center professionals who know their students really well to make the experience more powerful for them. So I think that's really kind of how we think about the student side application and some of the principles we're developing off of.
I love it. And personalization is so key. I think that's really important. I actually did a focus group this morning with 8 different students, and they talked about that, how they, if they're interested in computer science, they don't want to see a whole bunch of information about how they can go be consultants at, for a finance firm. And that's important. And that's also what they're starting to expect now, because in so many different platforms on Facebook and on Snapchat, I mean, you're getting information that is tailored for you. And that's what's so brilliant. So let's dive a little bit into that. So tell me a little bit about how you've developed some of the artificial intelligence and machine learning in order to deliver that tailored content.
Totally. So machine learning is a core component of our student side of the application. We're trying to take best practices and kind of recommendation systems advice from the most popular products that students are using, like Netflix and Spotify today. We want to apply that machine learning to help really students discover different career opportunities and really kind of complement this career development process. The way we kind of think about it internally is a lot of students are trying to. You can almost kind of break down this job search funnel. There's this idea that students trying to discover and learn from peers, learn from young alumni, learn from Career Service Center professionals. This is, I think, kind of almost the first part of the career development journey. And a lot of that experience can be backed up with fantastic machine learning that interweaves a student's interests and a lot of things they tell us, they want out of a career into actual information based on students that have gone in different career paths at their university, based on employers that are visiting on campus, based on employers that are doing info sessions or coming to a career fair. So you can really personalize a lot of this content. I think a fun example of this is that students get a lot of students today, I won't say all of them, but it's very easy for them to almost it's very easy for them to kind of stumble onto these like very static career paths that they believe are like the only route, right? So it's like I'm studying, for example, accounting, and it's like all I can do is go work for the Big Four, E&Y, Deloitte, or but maybe the student's really passionate about film and it's quite creative, right? And it loves, like, say, for example, Disney. Well, they have no idea today that maybe there's like an accounting entry-level accounting position at Disney that might be a great fit for their personal passions and the way they want to make an impact on a company. But outside of inside the classroom and when you're talking to peers on campus, it's like, you got to go to the Big Four. You got to go to the Big Four. That's the only option available. So the discovery process and leveraging machine learning to bring together students, preferences and all that can hopefully expose a student to an opportunity like a Disney accounting position. Another fun example, I think, of machine learning is how can we help liberal arts majors understand their potential? Like, there's so many different, especially like UVA, a liberal arts institution like UVA, there's so many different career opportunities and kind of potential directions you can go. The opportunity set is so wide. So how can you leverage machine learning to help students learn from other students? Students identify career paths that other peers have gone down. I think that's those are kind of fun examples of how we think about machine learning.
So how are you integrating in some of the other experiences so that way they can see, like, here's what other students have done, or and kind of explore?
Great question. There's a lot of examples. I'm just kind of thinking. So the way
I'm going off script here.
And hopefully it's fun. I just have a dialogue. So the way that it's currently done today in Handshake, there's some really interesting, kind of information that we have by partnering with universities that, when you can put it in an interface, can really help students. Some career service centers joke around that they say it's like the blind leading the blind a lot of times, students, right, trying to make career decisions. So the way that we embed peer-to-peer information is, today students build profiles. When they log into Handshake, they basically choose like whether they want to build a profile and who they want to share that profile with. So a lot of students choose to build these profiles that can be seen by employers, because employers are interested in kind of proactively reaching out to students. So students will build a profile very analogous to like a LinkedIn-like profile, where they have like extracurriculars, projects, coursework history. The profile is really meant to allow a student who maybe doesn't have that much work experience to still look awesome on the system. So the user experience is designed around, how do you show off like what a freshman is doing and still make them feel confident? Yeah. So students can then also choose whether they want their profile to be public to other students. So this is a very popular trend kind of on the network, where if you choose to be public to other students, then now you're searchable. So I can see students that are studying philosophy that are juniors, and I can filter down and look at like what are the internships that they've done, where are they going full time when they update their profile. So that peer-to-peer information exchange, I think, is really powerful. And when it comes to a scale perspective, we're actually the largest network of student profiles in the country. Like we're far larger than pretty much anybody else out there in terms of scale. So we've done some research on our side, but we have like 5 to 20 times more profiles at every one of these schools than so many other systems do. And so that really, from a scale perspective, students can really learn about other students' pathways and background. Soon, I think Handshake will eventually open up this network to students who will be able to see other students across universities. We're really kind of experimenting with that today, and talking to universities about how to build that experience in the best way. Students can also read reviews. So this is really a neat. I think UVA is. Are you using reviews right now? Did UVA opt into using their reviews product, or?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
Yeah. I'll tell you a little about it. So students can review companies and talk a little bit more. It's not necessarily meant to like rank an employer by like a number of stars on a couple dimensions, but it's more meant to help students learn, what do I wish I would have known prior to working at this company? What did I learn over the summer internship? So the questions are really specific around helping a student understand and learn from another student's experience, maybe on an internship or full-time job. So on the review side, I think we have, tens of thousands of reviews that are being seeded across these universities. And about, I'd say about a fourth of the universities on Handshake currently can see reviews. So at schools that leverage reviews, there's a lot more information sharing that helps support this kind of career journey. And then lastly, the area that students can communicate with each other is in this new feature that we're building we're calling communities. So a student can ask other students questions, and this manifests itself in like a lot of different ways. So today, students ask each other questions in a lot of different products. So if you talk to students, especially highly driven students at the top schools, they're asking questions about different career paths in Facebook groups. They're asking questions about career paths in kind of group me conversations with their fraternity or campus organizations. There's small sites on the web that are incredibly popular with certain careers, like, for example, Wall Street Oasis within the finance community, where students are asking each other questions. So we're trying to bring all this activity and question and answer information into Handshake. And so that's a product that's kind of currently in beta, and we're working with probably 50 or 60 universities to experiment with them on how to interweave that in. But that's been also incredibly successful. Students can ask questions like, what does it mean to work at a big company versus a small company? What was your experience working at a tech startup? How is it working in San Francisco? What is tech marketing versus product marketing? So there's like all these questions that students have, and creating a safe atmosphere where they can learn from each other and learn from young alumni, I think is another fun area. So I think all these themes around information is really broken down on the student side of the product into how can we democratize information related to how to support this career journey. What's kind of sad about this, or probably not necessarily sad, but I think what the huge opportunity that we have is that there are so many students that go to university that don't have amazing resources and don't have enough resources to be able to, sorry about the phone call here, I'll mute this. Go to universities that don't have enough resources. So you think about, there's so many first generation college students that are going to universities that have, one or two or three people in the career service center office. And those students are just disadvantaged because they don't have they historically didn't have access to the right opportunities. They also don't have, sorry, this guy, keep on getting a phone call here. I'm just going to totally disconnect.
You're a popular guy.
I'm kind of, I'm going to just put the do not disturb on here on the Mac. I'm sorry about that. So this principle goes around democratizing access to opportunities, democratizing information. So how can we make it easier for first generation college students at universities that don't have a lot of resources to learn from peers, to learn from young alumni?
And it expands their network, which is so brilliant. And if you think about it, I mean, like you said, there's some universities that have 50 career counselors, and then you have Albion that might only have 2. And so being able to provide them resources from a large audience is brilliant. And what I love about that is that it is so telling of our behavior as consumers. So, I purchase things on Amazon.com. And one of the big ways that I decide whether or not I'm going to purchase a product is based on the user reviews. And I really take them into account of, like, I may not even know these people, but knowing that they're fellow, purchasers, that, it has some credibility to it. And so what you've done is you've developed this network of students being able to say, here's my experiences, and yours might be different. Maybe you really like this, internship, but here's some challenges that I have that you may want to be cognizant of. And I think that's brilliant, because it really feeds into the behavior that we are in a generation, and even the younger generations, where you want to get as much information about something as you can before you make a decision. And so providing that information in a way that is easily accessible and tailored to that student is really smart.
Totally. Thank you. I think there's one other huge void here, which I'd love to talk about, which is not only is a lot of this information, and a lot of information around shopping and watching movies, that's all being democratized. And, these are like, these younger students are just complete digital natives that have been used to this type of information their entire lives. But there's also one other huge barrier, which is this kind of, societal opportunity gap that exists today, which is, heavily correlated with the socioeconomic status of your family. And And that's such a huge factor for career outcomes. It's really unsettling. Like if you are a first generation college student in America today, I mean, there are students that we talk to that they don't know anybody in their family network or friend network that has gone to college and is working in a knowledge worker job. And they're going to university struggling to pay for classes, trying to get part-time jobs. They're struggling to make it to class. Thinking about careers oftentimes falls on the back burner for a lot of these students. And it's so I think, how can we create a really friendly place that is kind of inclusive to a lot of their, to their unique challenges, and help share with them information that oftentimes you just call your, if you're a lot of students in America today, you just call your parents and you get connected to an uncle who knows somebody to talk about career path X. Many of these first generation college students and at universities that are far away from these metropolitan hubs, they don't have access to this type of information. And so we really want to help students meet their full potential. And a lot of that comes with, breaking down information, breaking down networks, breaking down access. And so, yeah, that's I think what's really exciting about Handshake.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand. Like, I didn't have anybody in a family that had ever worked in any kind of marketing, and I'm like, all right, so what kind of fields can I go into? And they're like, I don't know. Like, no idea. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. That's really brilliant. And one of the things that I love that you talked about is that you make the profiles accessible to other students, because I think so often, like on social media, you only share the really good things. So, people that use social media more often are thinking like, oh my God, like I'm not going to Bali and all these amazing trips. And I'm not, everyone's putting this perfect version of themselves out online. And so they start comparing themselves to that. So I would imagine similarly, it's like that in the career search, where they're like, oh my God, everyone's got an internship and I don't have one yet. What am I going to do? And so being able to say, like, you know what, not everyone had an internship. And sometimes people went and they worked at the Y during the summer, or, and that's okay. And that, don't compare yourself to like two people that are outspoken about it. See that everyone has that, diversity of experiences. I think that's really smart. So can we talk a little bit more about what are some of the biggest challenges to creating a web and mobile platform design that interacts with a wider range of users?
So I think a lot of the challenges in connecting with such a wide range of users is just how each one of them wants to use technology, and kind of what, helping a student who's like super tracked finance senior at, UPenn is very different than helping a liberal arts first generation college student at Oakland University, in the state of Michigan. So I think building an experience that they find relevant and personalized to them and intuitive to use, I think we're really focused on like talking to users and listening about their kind of unique needs, and building an application that does work on those very different paths. And then you talked about it a little bit as well, where some students are just trying to afford college and find a part-time job, and they want to find something close to, say for example, close to UVA, where you're a leader. How can we work with the Career Service Center to make sure that the students have the right access to part-time jobs when they're searching as a student for a part-time job? That experience is very different than navigating the banks their senior year of college and trying to read reviews and learn from other students. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And then employers today are really focused on leveraging and thinking about college talent as a way to help diversify their workforce and really seed their employee base with technology first young millennials, right? So we see a lot of companies that the diversity of your workforce and the diversity of thought, the racial diversity, gender diversity, socioeconomic diversity, what school you went to, major diversity, all these factors, I think have been proven to be incredibly influential. Like when you have diversity of thought internally, like the business outcomes are proven that you're more successful. And so I think so many companies are trying to think about college talent as a way to help bring in more underrepresented minorities into the workforce, to empower and build the next kind of generation of leaders inside these companies. And so we're seeing companies use Handshake to really build more kind of a wider breadth of pipeline across small schools, big schools, regions. I think that's also a challenge as well, is how do you help support a Fortune 500 company hiring 5,000 kids a year, all the way down to a small nonprofit in Florida trying to hire, 2 marketing interns.
Yeah.
And so, building an interface that works for them presents challenges as yeah.
And one thing I have to say is, I have access to the platform, and I have access as a employer, as a staff member, and as a student to be able to kind of look and see. And what you've done that's so brilliant is that you have created very different interfaces that I feel are very intuitive. So because employers age in, computer familiar, using different products, their familiarity with those different kinds of things, all the way, you have people that are like, yeah, I'm really good at it. And like, I kind of use it because I have to for work. And then you have, like you said, the digital natives. So you've developed a product that on the student side looks very different from the counselor side. But at the same time, they maximize the user need. And one of the best things you do that I think really highlights the principles of usability is that you don't need training to use the product. It's like, you don't need training to use Netflix. That's why it's so effective. You don't need training to use Facebook. That's why it was so effective. And so having a product that is very intuitive, where it's like, you know what, I need to find a job. I'm going to click on jobs. Bam! It's like, it seems like it's obvious, but that doesn't always happen.
Totally.
And I love the way you've done that is you've looked at what their needs are and really focused on their needs and developed the product so it is intuitive to each of those different audiences.
Thanks. Yeah. It's something we really try to do a great job of, and I'm so glad to hear that. I think it's also not only trying to build an interface that's intuitive, but also something that you want to come back to and use, that you find a ton of value in as a student. I think it's like really important. There's just like so many best practices to leverage off of these amazing companies in Silicon Valley that the students do love to use. So we try to like learn from those companies, and then also talk to all different types of students in order to build something that they really find, they find helpful. And that's what we're hearing from students, is that we're the number one spot they come to. They want to come to, they come back to over and over and over again. The scale of this has just gotten so massive. At UVA, where you're an administrator, and I would make assumption that, you talk to juniors and seniors, everybody's heard of Handshake. I mean, it's really the
Well, that's my job to make sure that they've heard of it. So yes, I'm doing that.
Great.
But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you would like to develop in the future. So as Handshake continues to grow and expand, one of the things that I've seen your company has done over the past couple of years is that you're always looking, you're always changing, you're always evolving. So how do you see the interface evolving over the next year or two? What are some of the trends that you're observing that you're like, okay, let's kind of jump along on that?
Yeah. So, I think what really keeps me up at night is trying to think about how can we help more students be successful in this journey, and how can we democratize information and access, and partner with more universities to really create a lot more fairness in this kind of college to career journey. And what I get most excited about next is just the continued growth and scale of the network. So this year, being at over 750 schools, most universities in America using the product, pretty much every large top employer in America viewing this as the primary place that they come to find and connect with talent, and continue to build student products that students love to use and they find a ton of value in. So I think the way I see Handshake evolving more and more is how can we continue to provide more utility and more value to students in this journey, more information from peers. I think there's a ton to be said about continuing to kind of break down the barriers between universities. So I think there's a lot that students can learn from one another across institutions. We're already starting to see this, happen with reviews. I think it will happen with, question and answer community where students are asking each other questions. And, there's way more kids at Stanford, for example, that say go to work at startups than at UVA. So what can the Stanford students that are going to work at startups, they'll help each other, but how can they also help share information that helps students at UVA who want to end up in Silicon Valley working at a large tech company? So I think that's an example of some of, democratizing some of the barriers to information that we're excited about on Handshake. And then from an employer perspective, employers, this kind of macro trend of, employers are continuing to invest more and more and more in college talent. The war, so to speak, for the competitive students, is only increasing. We're seeing really, employers move earlier and earlier. We're seeing employers really leverage proactive outreach techniques to build brand on campus, and students really expect that today. I think what we hear from students is that they want to see behind the curtain. They want to learn from other students. They want to understand what it truly means to work at that company, what their impact can be, how they would be a good fit there. And so, employers are really starting to think more carefully around how do they brand themselves, how do they really build a compelling candidate experience that allows a student to learn from them. I think
along with that, I want to jump in because for those who are not working in career services, I'm going to call it out. The finance area is now recruiting for students over a year before they're intending to do an internship. They have to. So if you want to do an internship after your third year, you're having to interview at the beginning of your second year and commit to that. Sure. So, and a lot of other, consulting firms are now thinking, should we also be moving ahead? And so I think it's really smart that it's like, how am I going to make a commitment for something that's going to happen in a year and a half? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't even know what classes I'm going to take, let alone whether or not I'm going to want to do this internship. So that's really smart.
Totally. I was just on a panel yesterday at UC Berkeley with a lot of the top 25 business schools are all at this conference called NUBS, National Undergraduate Business kind of organization that meets up, and they were having employers. So there was the head of campus recruiting from one of the top 3 banks and the head of campus recruiting from one of the top 4 consulting firms, accounting firms. And they were talking around they were joking around about how they thought they might be recruiting high school students soon because they're coming so early. I mean, students are getting offers for their, sophomore year summer internship, at the beginning of their freshman year summer internship, right? Like, and you see that happening at UVA. I can imagine is the banks and accounting firms and consulting firms are having to move so early, and they're being outflanked in a lot of situations by smaller, more nimble companies. This idea that a student receive kind of 4 offers all around the OCI or on-campus interviewing timeline, like this behavior is really being disrupted by companies building, better relationships with students earlier. So I think maybe if we zoom out to a more macro perspective, I think the big trend that's changing in college recruiting is that companies aren't just viewing this process as I post the job and pray the right kids apply. They're not just sitting at career fair booths kind of hoping the right kid walks up. For many companies, students actually don't even know what the company does. So they don't actually have the right attendees walking up to the booth. So companies are really moving to this and working with universities in really compelling ways to build brand, to stay proactively, to proactively engage with the audience, to share stories about what interns and full-time hires are doing, and students expect that. I mean, I think we ran some data on our side that like 70% of students prefer to work at a company that has reached out to them, proactively. It's I think a big trend that's changing is that, career fairs, I'm not saying career fairs are dying, info sessions aren't dying, interviews aren't dying. I think that those will be around for a while. But the way that companies are thinking about spending their time on campus is a lot higher leverage and more informed with data and existing relationships than has ever kind of been the case.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly smart. Well, I think this is so much wonderful and helpful information. And, do you have any additional tips for us when it comes to developing a positive user interface and some of the key principles of how Handshake was developed?
Yeah, I think one trend in higher education that I think is really exciting that we leverage a lot at Handshake is like this kind of idea of design thinking, and really, being calculated about how you design your marketing strategy and how you design your touch points. Many universities are kind of leveraging design thinking to really reevaluate the way they're offering services to students. So I think that's a big trend in higher education, and it's a huge and important trend at enterprises and small startups all around the country. So I think that's one kind of very exciting trend in career service centers that I'd employ everybody to kind of listen and learn more about from peers.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. And if anyone from the University of Florida is watching as a current UF MBA Gator and a UF alumni, for the love of God, get on Handshake because your platforms right now are so challenging.
Yeah, you're really calling on the University of Florida there. I hope they're on the line. We would would love to partner with their teams.
Oh, I'm like using their stuff as a student because we have certain like career modules that we have to go through this semester for one of my classes. And I'm going through it and I'm like, oh my, for the love of God, go to Handshake. Like this is so hard to use and it's so clunky. So I am a brand advocate.
Thank you. What's so fun right now is that so many employers are actually reaching out to schools and asking them to switch systems because it's just so much easier. And students are asking their universities too. I mean, one university, Wellesley in college, Christine over there, the director, ran a survey, and it was like, I think 6% of students approved of their old technology. And when they switched to Handshake, it was like 96% of students approved of the technology. So there's just a huge opportunity to leverage, technology that just isn't totally broken in these career service centers. So excited about your comments too.
Oh, and like you said, it's if you have a whole bunch of separate systems, it makes it a lot harder for everybody because it's a mess. But yes, I would like to thank you so much for all of your insight and your advice. And I think your concepts on really focusing on the user and developing that interface and making a personalized experience is really, really valuable. And I think that's something we all can learn from and go forward with. I'd like to also thank you, our program sponsor for M Stoner, and to everyone who's watching. I hope you have a good day.
Thanks, Amy. Have a great one. Appreciate it.